Welcome to the Diablo 3 podcast. We are online at DiabloInkGamers.com. I am your not quite laid-back host, Flux, and I'm joined on the show tonight by Xanth.
Ahoy, hoy.
And by Katniss.
Aloha.
A.k.a. the most famous Crusader in the world.
Claim to fame.
And we're going to talk about some recent play stuff and power leveling and Xanth naming all of his witch doctors Salem for a reason. And because that's where they burn witches, you understand. And the community buff, puzzle goblins, legendary materials from goblins, and a little bit of theory crafting on hard caps if we get to that, and probably some other stuff that the guests will bring up. And a really terrible idea Katniss had about blood shards we'll get to last if we don't have time. But well, hopefully we won't have time, and you won't have to defend that.
Well,
Katniss,
thank God, hopefully.
You can escape. Yeah, we can only hope. So be sure to filibuster in the meantime. But first off, what have you guys been playing lately? Why don't you start off, Katniss? You are not currently the most famous Crusader in the world, and tell us why and how that came about.
Yeah, well, you know, I may not always play the Crusader, but when I do.
I do it with Blizzard devs.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I've been jumping back in, especially now that the anniversary buff has hit and great patch 2.0.5 has come along to save every Crusader everywhere out of mediocreness and into awesomeness. But yeah, I've just been doing that. Been playing the Crusader on hardcore. I did lose the last one I had, so by the last time I was on the podcast, I was talking about the last round of buffs that they gave to the Crusader and saying how it was good, but it could be better. And then that Crusader died, I think maybe like 2 days later. So the buffs could have been better. And then, yeah, just leveled one back up slowly. And then I got told that my build was going to be featured on the Theorycraft Thursday, which I guess we'll get into. And I was like, oh, crap, I got to play this game some more in case anyone looks at my profile. And they're like, it doesn't even have a level 70 Crusader anymore. It's not even good.
Yeah, so you sent in the information, and then the Crusader you sent in about died.
Yeah, literally like 30 minutes after I sent the email.
That's the danger with hardcore and Theory Crafting Thursday.
Yeah, no, I actually sent an email and I was like, oh, disregard what I just sent you because that character no longer exists.
And they just restored it for you because it was before.
Shh.
No, they don't do that.
Anyone. No, it's not possible in quotes.
Of course not. Yeah, ha ha, la la la. We can't hear you, right?
No, I mean, I ended up building up a new one, and because that build was really dependent on a lot of crafted sets, it actually wasn't too tough to get it back to a similar working order of what it had been. And it was just a matter of kind of finding some replacement pieces. But yeah, I mean, it was a really cool experience to see that get thrown up there. Nevelistus told me earlier in the week that it was going to go up, and that's when I went in the mad dash to kind of level up some more and play. But it's really cool. There's a lot of interesting feedback. And then
yeah, I was going to ask about the feedback because the first one they did was a monk, and then the last podcast 2 weeks ago, our guests Muggs and Rankale had both been playing a lot of monks, and they spent about 20 minutes explaining why that was a horrible build, and it was sort of this quirky little cute thing, but it wasn't viable above like T1,
right.
And they were all like min-maxing antagonism and said the feedback was really bad on it, and Blizzard shouldn't have picked this one, etc. And then you put your head in the lion's jaw next up, Katniss, with your Crusader. What kind of feedback did you get? Was it an awesome build? People were like, noob.
I'd say it's about 70-30 in the realm of positive to negative. Because it seemed like a lot of people, I think my putting up a Crusader build is kind of a safe thing to do too in terms of all the classes that are possible. Because people are still looking for, a way to play the Crusader that's going to be super effective. And, my build's kind of out there because I'm not using Heavenly Strength or the two-hander or any of that. So my whole idea was I wanted it to be speedy. I wanted it to kind of just be, you're spending resource, you're getting resource back in, you're moving around, you're not limited by the movement speed buff. And this obviously was all before 2.0.5, which changed that passive a little bit. But yeah, it's been mostly positive, which I was really surprised at because, people are usually very mean on the internet. But people were saying they're enjoying it, they're trying it out, which is just awesome in general to know that, like, there are other people out there playing the Crusader the exact same way that I am right now.
Do you get royalties out of that or anything? Like 10% of their blood shards go to your account now?
No, I got the Cheetos. I got a delivery of,
Oh, yeah, and you got 100 pounds of Cheetos from Blizzard. That's the prize, right?
That's it, man. I'm rolling in it now.
You played a little Crusader in the old days, Xanth. Have you read Katniss's build, and have you tried a Crusader?
I have not actually seen the build, but I did get a chance to jump in and play my Crusader, who has been uber durable, and after playing with them right away, kind of from launch. I was getting a little frustrated with the way the class was playing out, and shelved them and kind of went back to playing a Witch Doctor, which has just been amazing. But once I saw the patch notes and I saw the the remove well, them removing the movement speed cap and stuff like that on Heavenly Strength, I went in and started playing with it, and it was really, really enjoyable. And sadly, I was just still a little too devoted to my Witch Doctor to really want to play the Crusader at length. So every time I log in, I'm kind of torn because I really want to play my Witch Doctor and I really want to play my Crusader, which in some ways is a nice thing that I actually have that feeling as opposed to just having one character I'm really attached to. I now have two, and of course in hardcore that could easily be taken care of in a matter of moments.
And often is, as you said. We were making jokes before the show started about how we should call you Torquemada, or you should name all your witch doctors Salem, because that's where witches go to burn. And you've had another witch doctor mishap, you said?
Yeah, it's actually a little bit of my fault and a little bit of somebody else's. I was playing with a clanmate, had done a few rifts, and I loaded into the next one. They had loaded just a little bit faster than I did. It was one of the hell rifts where you have just massive swarms coming at you right away, and I think there were 3 or 4 champs, and they immediately procced their life-saving skills and poured it out. But by the time I had zoned in, it was a little too late. So I zoned into Spirit Vessel, proccing, and then my death. So that was a great experience, especially after writing about how I had died at 70 before, and it's just a twisted form of irony. On top of that, having kind of lamented about how it's going to be a pain to kind of go back on that whole grind again and trying to make up for everything that you've lost, mainly due to the items. Just a vicious and cruel irony after that. But thankfully, in just a matter of a few days, I was back up to 70, and I'm probably better geared, mainly due to the anniversary buff, but better geared than when I had died.
I think the lesson to learn,
Oh, that's
I
convenient.
think the lesson to learn here is that you should never write about your build or what you're playing, because then it will instantly die.
I I can only second that because I swear every time I've written about a character, they die about at least within a week of writing it. I think the only way I was able to make it to Paragon 100 in classic Diablo 3 was the fact that I never wrote like that progress. If I would have even mentioned like, all right, I'm going from Paragon 70 to 80 tonight or something like that, I would have been dead within 5 minutes.
Right? It's like,
Well, we did live stream the 100, but you didn't die in that game. My monk was there to
Yeah,
carry you, though, so
there
that
it
was okay.
was. I think with the live stream, we played it really safe though too.
Yeah, we were like MP1 or something. It
Yeah,
was
we weren't
embarrassing.
doing
First time, that monk died like a week later on a disconnect, so maybe that was
see?
the curse.
it transferred since I'd already hit where I
Yeah.
needed to be.
There's something to this, man.
Yeah, I think that monk was Paragon 80, 81 or 91, I forget, but it was the highest I'd gotten in the old days in the old Diablo 3 when it was individual Paragon
Yeah,
levels.
I thought you were in the 90s.
Yeah, I think he was
That
91 when
sounds
You
he
were in
right.
the
died.
home
90 or
stretch.
91. Yeah, and I loaded the Forgotten Festering Woods, and it was like nothing was happening, and I was getting like 1 frame per 5 seconds. I'm like, this is not good. I'm hitting escape buttons, and if I just hit escape and just something, I probably would have been okay. Just escape, exit game, but I kept trying to move and hoping the lag would catch up, and I died to like regular ghouls or something. So it was just pathetic, like the most like useless, wasteful death ever. But that's what hardcore is fun for,
Oh,
Right.
right?
yeah.
All the listeners are like, this is why I don't play hardcore. But anyway, speaking of recent deaths, and that was what you were going to talk about a little bit. Our first topic was well, let's do the Crusader a little bit first because that was Katniss was starting on that. So 205 made tons of big patch buffs, largely to the Crusader. And once again, they were like, well, we're going to do monk buffs later. And they did a blue post the next day saying, we're aware of monk problems, and we're going to make big buffs to this. And I'm still bitter because I haven't played a monk since before Reaper of Souls, and he's my favorite character. And Xanth used to play a lot of them also, and I'm not happy with them. But that was kind of the last show was like endless monk conversation, so we'll skip that for now, and say that Blizzard has said the 2.10 will have lots of monk buffs, which will be coming soon. Our favorite four-letter
Oh,
word, right?
yes.
But so the recent patch did do a bunch of Crusader buffs, and ironically for you, Katniss, you sent your build in before the patch, and then of course everything got buffed and changed. And the biggest one is the Heavenly Strength. Is it Strength? Heavenly
Hmm.
Yeah.
Strength. That used to be, it enables you to do two-handed weapon in one hand with a shield, and it used to be a big movement speed bonus, a buff, debuff. And we were like, that's the only way they can actually make this fair because it gives you a ton more DPS, even at a much slower attack rate. But it's a movement speed is like the most important thing in the game, and you can't overcome that. And I'm like, we were talking about this in the last podcast. Like that's what they had to do because what other penalty could they give you that would be sufficient to actually matter with giving you the ability to use two-handed weapons? And so they changed that all around Katniss, and now is that like the mandatory Crusader skill, or is there have they found a way
You
to
know
make it
what?
work?
When I read that on the patch notes, I really thought I was like, holy crap! Like everyone's gonna. This is essentially making Heavenly Strength mandatory. But then you look at Fervor, which is another passive that they completely changed in 2.0.5, and it's essentially the one-handed equivalent to Heavenly Strength, and it reads essentially 15% added attack speed when you have a one-hander equipped, and also 15% cooldown reduction, all from that one passive. So it actually makes it relatively strong just when you're using something like Bombardment, which is a big cooldown skill for the Crusader, or even like Falling Sword, any of your big cooldown damage dealers. Those come back like I mean not instantly of course because it's still like 90 seconds going what's 15% of that like I don't know, like don't do math. Like 70, it essentially goes down to like 70 seconds or something. So I mean, it's significant. And I haven't actually tested out the Heavenly Strength versus Fervor yet because Fervor is so much fun. Just being able to again like spam your spender, and then spam your regen. And I don't. I think they did a really good job balancing those two out. But I'm guessing someone out there is crunching the numbers to figure out which one's going to be best.
I didn't like Heavenly Strength because I don't like using two-handed weapons because they're just so slow. Like I never use a crossbow with a demon hunter. I just don't like firing so slowly. Even though there obviously are builds that you can do it. You get a build that's obviously really big hitting stuff and you have a lot of regen or a lot of cooldown. You don't mind if it's a slower attack. But I mean, the fervor one sounds like much more my style with a crusader because I didn't enjoy being really slow and feeling
Yeah.
ponderous, which is why I don't play monks currently. Sadly
Yeah.
enough.
Well, I mean, it's interesting too, because if you remember with Loot 2.0, they buffed two-handers in the attack speed category. So, all of them, I think, got like a 10% just increase to their attack speeds. So if you have a two-handed sword, I think the base attack speed is 1.2, which is just as slow as your regular one-handed mace. So it actually doesn't turn out to be that slow. So I'm still curious to test it, but it's just it's been awesome in general. Just all the Crusader change. The fact that we went up from 15% damage reduction to a full 30% now. Um,
Which
it
is
Yeah,
crazy. I mean, that's like a really good passive skill for
yeah.
free.
I was sincerely surprised by that because I thought I mean, from the start of the game being at 0, and when they put it to 15, I felt like that was already pretty good, because it was, you have a lot of defense already. You're not
Mhm.
quite, like the monk and the barbarian. So 15 seemed like a great compromise. And then all of a sudden, nope, we're going to go right to 30. I mean, I'm not complaining, especially from the hardcore element. But
Right.
that really shocked me. And the other big thing, at least for me, from hardcore was the cheat death passive.
Mm-hmm.
Out of all,
Indestructible.
out of all the classes that don't have one, I mean, and technically the Crusader did, but it was built into the skill. Was that uh,
Akarat's champion.
Yeah, that's it. Um, so that was built into the skill, but since they redid the skill, they gave it to us as a passive. That's huge for hardcore again. Um, I think that was one of the first things I did was when I got onto my Crusader was just make sure I had that passive good to go. Um, Not that I really need it because I know my Crusader has Ice Climbers and then has Countess Julia's cameo. Um, so I already feel pretty indestructible. But on the off chance that it does happen, that passive is awesome.
It's a beautiful insurance policy. Yeah.
Exactly.
And you died before that was available, Katniss. Would you have survived if you'd had it?
I'm trying to think. My death was
Your theory
if I
crafting
had
monk.
if I had Xanth's items, I would have actually stayed alive because my death was frozen and then arcane beams that tore me up while I was frozen. And
Yeah, ice climbers are ridiculous. They feel like cheating. My barbarian has those on US, and it's like I can just ignore almost all attacks now.
it's
You can't be frozen. You can't be jailered. It's just like, I have whirlwind, so it's like I could just, nothing ever traps me with the barb. It's like I feel like I can never die unless I get a
And
disconnect.
especially since movement is so important too, for being able to get out of dodge and, get literally like dodge the things that are going to hurt you the most. That if you can't ever be stopped physically, then you kind of are indestructible at that point. Your death will only be your own fault from there.
Or perhaps some clanmate who lets you portal into a rift when it's completely clogged with
Seriously,
champions. So did you kick him in that game, or did you exit the game before you
there
kicked him out of the
were
clan
three
thing?
other people that went into that rift. Two of them procced, and everybody just left me to die.
And you are the leader of this clan. These are your
I
clanmates.
know. I should have.
Did you exact a cruel
I
revenge?
didn't. I could have demoted him or something because he is a lieutenant in the guild. But no, no. Um,
We really need more clan options, don't we? Like ability to give rewards or like to charge rewards. Clan demerits. You owe 500 blood charge to get back into good standing, and they go into the clan
oh, I
bank.
like that. That would.
The clan bank. I'm making air quotes as I say that. So
See, that kind of sounds like
as
my.
opposed to the clan leader's personal account.
That kind of sounds like my idea there, Flux. I think you like it.
I've just we always joke when we get on the clan and try to do stuff, and it's like Blizzard keeps saying that they're going to try to get some of the features that AOL had in 1998 in the clans pretty soon. But no promises. Because why would you have a message board or ability to see when someone last logged on, or any way to give demerits or anything? Why would you want those features? It's only a clan in a
Or
video
even
game. It's the first time. It's the first time any video game's ever had a clan either. So there's no way they could have looked at other features in other games and said, "Oh, this worked in World of Warcraft in 2003. We should use this." No, it's all brand new. Why should we bother with
well,
that?
I think I've been suggesting since day one was just being able to know when somebody dies, especially for hardcore only clans. How nice would it?
Yeah, that hardcore death notification was like the first second of the clan. Everyone's like, "Yeah, we need
Right.
this."
And
Maybe in 2.10 when they make monks worth
then
playing
I could
again.
have really, guilt tripped Osmandius for getting me killed. Now everybody knows what you did.
Right.
I actually told you to make him a lieutenant too,
Yeah.
or I suggested it
And
anyway. And now look how he repays
I
you.
think one of the first things he said after that happened was, "Are you going to be talking about this on the podcast?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm going to bring this up."
You know, it would actually be cool if they tracked how many people have died while you're in a game. People
I
can know
like
if
that.
you're some kind of PK or if you just are a bad luck charm or something.
You're an MKer. Well, you have clan notes. You can put a note next to his name now, and it'll be his permanent shame. It goes on his permanent record.
He did.
Beware of letting him portal in
He did
first.
help me back up on the trek back to 70. So I think, in my opinion, sacrificing a little bit of his time to help me get back was getting back in my good graces.
Yes, well, and we're all happy,
Oh yeah,
lovey-dovey now.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so changing topics. I think we're done with that mostly. We'll get to the power leveling in a minute, Xanth. You want to talk about that? But just to change topics briefly. Community buff. We have a community buff right now, which gives you double rift keys and 100% more legendaries, which no one actually has any idea what that actually means. But not double shards and not double experience and not a gold fight bonus, etc. Are you satisfied with the current community buff for the week?
I love it. I have honestly no idea.
You really need more rift keys?
I'm not even worried about the keys. I'm just running riffs and really really enjoying it. Um, it feels legitimate, and I've seen a lot of people posting this asking for the buff to be just permanent, and I know that it'd be very weird to come in, once the buff is supposed to expire and say, "Hey, we're just going to let it lie," but it feels really good because majority of the legendaries I'm picking up, and like in an hour's play, if I'm getting 12, which is phenomenal, um, I'm most of them are junk. They're souls, but I feel like I can eventually get something good. And having that continuous drop, it does feel like something good is always around the corner. Whereas pre-buff, you kind of had those long, long stretches, and eventually, when you were rewarded, it was something that had no value. It had,
An endless
Mm.
yeah,
path.
I've got like the full Blackthorn set, which I'm actually wearing. But every time you see a Blackthorn, it's very disappointing because that could have been a set piece that you actually needed. Um, that can get frustrating. I haven't once felt that frustration during this week because I picked up a few things that I'm using that were good, but I've also found a lot of garbage. But it still feels like whatever comes next, I still have a good chance, as opposed to like there was a legendary I'm going to find for the next 2 hours, and now I can kind of play a little bit more and see if that's not correct or call it for the night.
So Xanth's design goal is more candy. How do you feel about that,
You know,
Katniss?
it's funny because
Do you like more candy? Everyone likes
I
more
love more
candy.
candy.
Or does it clash with your
Sour
Cheetos?
Patch Kids. I'll take it all. You know, I love the junk foods. I'm gonna have to eat a bit of my own words that I was exchanging with a friend, probably maybe a week or two after launch, where I was saying that I thought the drop rate was fine. I thought, you know, it catered towards kind of some of us, you know, hardcore in like the true sense of just playing the game, grinding it out. You know, over time, you're going to get to the drops you wanted to get, and it was just going to reward you for putting the hours in. But playing it during this week has just been phenomenal. Like to echo Xanth's sentiments, like it does really feel like any of those dry spells that you would get before. You're just like, I'm gonna log off because nothing's coming at this point. Like I find myself staying up late, like I'm, you know, my eyes are falling asleep, and it's hardcore. So I'm like, I should probably log off because I'm gonna do something stupid. But you just the candy does really feel like, oh, just the next mob that I kill is gonna drop something. And in the same sort of anecdotal experience too, that a lot of the drops aren't really great. Like it's a lot of stuff that you're still just taking to get salvaged or whatever. But there is that feeling where, okay, I know I've waded through 10 crappy legs, but maybe the next one is that a concept piece, or maybe the next one is that Thunder Fury that I need to get back. So I love it. I don't know if I honestly don't want it to become permanent because I still do like that idea of like grinding hard and, you know, making your time in mean something. But I would love it as a bonus like every now and again, every 2 months or so.
I could,
Do you wish you knew what the actual bonus meant?
yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's a little vague in terms of how it all plays out.
Yeah, like, where does that fit in the
I
equation? You know?
could see it though, like if we're talking about seasons and talking about like a shortened version of the game because it is so condensed to each individual season, that would be a huge appeal to someone like myself to really get invested in a season if this was going to be kind of the standard drop rate because you're going to have such a limited play time with that character and thus limited opportunities as opposed to the original Diablo 3 where you just could keep your character for that full year or whatever and there was no disconnect with it unless it did happen to die. But
Mm.
in a season, a drop rate like this would be really appealing to play and then also to abandon so that you could go back to that drop rate in the next season.
That's actually a really great point because they have been talking about, you know, ways to entice players in, and you know, there's been talk about season only legendaries and other things that they could do. But yeah, if it's going to be like a more rewarding drop rate system, I don't see why anyone wouldn't be like, all right, I'm going to give, you know, the ladder a chance for a couple of weeks or whatever, however long they want to go back into it before they go to their main characters. But also the fact too that that stuff would all then roll over into your main account once the season is done. It just seems like the perfect balance of, yeah, let's participate in the season. Okay, it's done. Go back to playing your main thing. Oh, next season's up. Yes, bigger drop rates. Go for it.
Because they don't want to have to farm those goddamn legendary materials again. That's why.
That's true. Ugh.
The fact that you have to go find 18 more shards of instinct plates to make your stupid all guild set again, I can see that's maybe one reason not to do a new legendary, new craft
That's
season
literally
yet.
what I was just doing before.
Although it would be fun for softcore people because they never had to rebuild anything. They have to rebuild again. It's like, wow, I have to make a character from what is this level one stuff? You know, how does this work? It's probably really slow to level up too. You've done that recently, Xanth. It takes forever to level up now. You can't get help from friends or
Oh,
anything. It's like an hour per level, something like that,
something
right?
like that. I do think with seasons it'll be interesting to go back to traditional leveling, but as I mentioned earlier, I did die recently. Um, so it stung. I looked at the death screen for a little bit, but I decided to kind of get back to it because I was going to get that damn Tasker and Theo gloves, and I wasn't going to be denied by a death. So I set out, by myself. I kind of just did 1 to 30 with, some of the gear that I had that was just sitting around, and it didn't take too long. And then I left for the night and came back the next day, and I sitting down. I'm like, all right, based on how long it takes, maybe I'll get to 50. I didn't have too much time. And I was looking through some of the communities, and I found that there was a hardcore power leveling. And I was really intrigued because the old system of power leveling involved you being behind somebody who's, a much higher level, running through Act 3, kind of them killing all the spiders and you getting a decent amount of experience, but there was a little bit of risk in it. I saw a lot of people who would get killed that way. So I'm like, well, what do we do in a Diablo that has adventure mode? How does power leveling work? Is it still Act 3 or whatever? So in the case of curiosity and journalistic integrity, I decided to um, you know venture in and see what it was like, and it was so easy. It was ridiculous. Um, Basically, you create a game in T6, and you're looking for two bounties: the Damp Cellar in Act 1 and the Cleansing of the Hell Rift in Act 4. And once you have found them, you would spam your community saying, I need somebody to clear, Cellar Act 1 or Rift Act 4. And somebody who's level 70 will come in, and then you can probably bring on two more people to leech if you want. They'll go to the cellar, they'll clear it out, they'll tell you it's safe. You port down there, and in the first rift I did, you stand in the little corner near the entrance while they open the chest, and you can just soak up all the experience from the 100 monsters they have to kill. Between the monsters and the bonus for turning in the bounty, I went from 30 to 35, and then rinse and repeat. I was able to get from 30 to 61 in less than like a half an hour or less, and that was well short of the time I spent going from 1 to 30. And basically, what I found was once you get up to about 61, creating games on Torment 6, nobody, at least on hardcore, is going to jump in and complete that cycle for you. But I ended up teaming up with Osmandius and doing just Torment bounties on Act 1 until I hit 70. So in the course of the night where I thought I was only going to be able to get to maybe 50, I had already got my character right back to where I died from.
It's pretty legit.
And did it bother you? Was there a sense of a nagging conscience and is the soullessness of your exploit, or were you okay with
Uh,
that?
Maybe there was a little. I don't mind leveling in Rebirth of Souls. I really think adventure mode plays into it being really much more desirable than what it used to be. But at the same time, it is one of those tasks that can be a little grindy, and the more you do it, not that I've done a lot in Reaper of Souls. I did a lot during the beta with all the Crusaders I had killed, but um, you kind of just want to get back to where you were. And with that, anniversary buff coming and stuff like that, I was kind of I wanted to get back to my witch doctor as soon as I could. So I didn't feel too bad, but as I saw the levels racking up so quickly, it did feel like a little bit like cheating, because I was being told, I was level, congratulations on level 32, and my character said level 35 because that's how fast I gained them. One fell swoop. It couldn't even keep up. So it did feel a little cheap in some regard, but at the same time, power leveling and Diablo kind of go hand in hand. It's been around. It was really prevalent in D2, and in D3, it had a little more risk element to it, where this one feels a lot more safe. You can even in the Act 4 one, where it's a little more dangerous, you don't even have to be present. All you have to do is you zone in, you drop a town portal, and zone out, and you still get the credit for the bounty and all the experience, and can easily jump up a couple levels by doing that.
That one is 2 levels, though. Do you have to go to the second level to get the experience on the
Nope.
second level? You just sit in the first and
No,
it's all good?
for some of them, like I would just join the game. They would clear out the little area by the waypoint. You would zone in, portal out, and then wait in town. They'd go to level 2 and clear it, and you'd be good.
Huh.
And then you feel horribly guilty afterwards. And apparently not, no.
I haven't done it since. Like a small part of me was like,
Well, you haven't
well,
died yet.
yeah, but I was also thinking like insurance
Soon.
policy. I could have leveled up like 3 witch doctors for the next one I'm gonna kill.
Yeah, just get them all ready. You can put your spare gear on the next one too, instead of having all your spare gear going into your stash. I'm wondering, have to like sort through
Right.
it next
It
time.
would be,
You can just like, oh, here's what I'm going to wear when I'm
yeah.
70 next time. Cha-ching.
Yeah, it's
How did you make your recent Crusader, your Crusader repair job there, Katniss? Did you power level or did you do it
see,
from the?
I'm so to me, Xanth is one of those like dirty players who does all these things to get back up to 70. It's funny too, is I had a friend who just decided to come over to the hardcore side of things, and he's like, "Dude, can you give me like a bunch of boss kills and stuff?" I was like, "No." He's like, "What?" I thought,
You're like,
well,
that's not
that's
right.
really it though. Like maybe it's dumb. Like I don't know, but I want it.
It's not how we do things in hardcore. You have to be legit. But wait,
For me, it's always been about playing the character. Like I could make 100 Crusaders, but I would always want to level them up, from 1 to 70 organically, the right way in quotes or whatever. Because I really like the attachment that you get to, along the way. Who knows if you find some randomly cool item at level 30 and you're gonna trash it by 70, but it's just this idea of like, starting out from baby steps from level 1 and doing the adventure mode or whatever it is you do to level up, and just knowing that like I did that on my own, I didn't have to go and get rushed. Like, and to me too, it's not a rush really to get back to it. Eventually, I doing it the through adventure mode. I think it took me maybe 10 hours. I'm so bad with keeping track of the time, so I don't know. But it wasn't a very long grind, and I had a couple of level reduced items along the way to help. But it just I don't know. I like the idea of doing it yourself and bootstrapping up and getting back up there, and it being all the sweeter when you re-gear, and it's even better than it used to be.
well, once you've done 50 of the same class, like Xanth Witch Doctors, perhaps you'll be like, yeah, I've kind of seen that. I've seen this movie before,
That could be it too. Maybe I should just get better at dying.
Right.
Yeah, or just never
Right.
die again. That's
I
that's my
mean,
current plan. I'm playing Demon Hunter, so I'm sure
yeah,
it'll be no
I would
problem.
agree
So.
with Katniss. I mean, I do enjoy the traditional, and I think majority of my characters have gone this way, but I was just so curious by how it actually worked that I wanted to see it through and see is it really this effective, and clearly it is. Um,
It was just
yeah,
Yeah,
research, really.
it really was. It was
Column
column
research.
fodder at this point. I mean, I could write about how Ozymandias killed me, but I can really just lay that on during this podcast and then write about the other stuff. Uh,
And that's coming up this week. You said you're doing your next column
yeah,
on power leveling.
it's just about good to go. I'm typing in a couple of things. Really, the last little part I'm working on is the question of whether or not Blizzard should do something about it because it does hark back to what happened in Diablo 3, which was the quest cascading, where people would be doing it was Zoltan Cool, I think, where
yeah.
you would do that, and then you would have people join, and you would leave and join, and everybody would get the quest bonus experience for each time it got turned in, and you would power level very, very quickly that way. Though I do think that this method is actually more effective and easier. Um, so I just thought that was I could see something happening in this case. But as Katniss had pointed out before we'd even started this, Wyatt had said that they do want some level of it, but I wonder if this might be too far.
Yeah.
Well, similar thing. They had to put a hotfix in right after the patch. People were doing this. You'd have a low level character make a Torment 6 game, and then you would just go in and do
Hmm.
rifts in that game. And that was always possible, and it still is possible. But what they did in the patch was increase the number of shards you would find on
Right.
above T1. So instead of it just being like 50 or so, it was scaling up to like 80 to 100 on higher level of torments. And people were doing those torment rifts in like 2 minutes and getting 80 to 100 shards for like 3 minutes of work, and then you can just go gamble like mad. And that obviously tied into gambling being
Right.
increased in leg rates. And now they're apparently now torment only items are also cadalable, as I've been trying to say. And if people keep asking that, I've asked, has anyone actually seen any? And people keep saying no, they haven't. But in theory, you can gamble torment only gear
I
for
had
Kazala now.
There was somebody on Twitter who had well,
Well, it
yeah,
must be
it
true
must be
then.
who had set that out because I put out a post about doing a podcast tonight. And if anybody had any topic ideas, I believe that was one of them. So we can check that off. We actually have covered it.
Boom. And I can confirm that you can get Torment only legs through her because I got two of the Thorn set, the Invokers gloves from her, like almost back to back too. It's kind of weird.
What difficulty level was your game?
Oh, I guess that's, yeah, maybe that might be a test too, but I was on T2.
I mean, yeah, should you go on T6 before you do gambling, like in the old days when you'd open caches on T6 and get
No,
Imperial
I just
gems?
did it in the game I was in. I was on T2.
Then did you? Yeah, it's because I mean now caches can drop tournament only gear, but you have to earn the caches on
Which
tournament or
impacts
higher.
lots of
So I don't think blood shards track what level you earned them on though. So it's unclear exactly how this works. But
That's interesting. Yeah.
speaking of the unclear thing, the thing I wanted to mention on the current community buffs is 100% increased legendaries, and we joked that no one knows what that means. And if people don't know the math, you look at look at DiabloWiki.net/torment. We have all the odds for legendary drop rates and other things that Torment does on that page. And so normal is 0% legendary drop rate, 25% bonus in Nephilim Rifts, and that's the same up through Master. Then you start getting bigger bonuses on Torment 1, etc. So on Torment 6, before the community buff, you would have 131% legendary drop bonus or 189% in Nephilim Rifts. And so if you say 100% more, what does that mean? Does that mean you're adding that on at the end of this? Is it going into the basic stat and then it gets multiplied by higher torment levels? Is it doubling your total torment fines after everything else gets added up? It just 100% doesn't tell you much when there's all these equations and calculations and essentially magic find-esque bonuses that we have now. So obviously the answer is more. MOAR. More. And don't worry your little pretty little head about the numbers because Blizzard doesn't tell us numbers because we're just nubs and we wouldn't understand them anyway.
It is curious that they won't explicitly say, like, Torment 1 gives you a 31%. Well, I mean, they gave it to us for Torment 1, Torment 2. But I don't understand why across the board, like, even in-game on the ticker, the slide ticker, where it used to say it before, as far as I know, right? When you guys are playing in the beta, it used to. That's a weird issue for me when they're supposed to be really big about, communication and kind of pulling back the curtain, letting us know what's going on, and then they're just going to hide all these numbers. And I wonder if it's just because it gives them more leeway to tweak it every now and again, or what.
Yeah, that's people always say that this way they can stealth nerf it whenever they want. No one will ever know. But of course, they could stealth nerf it and make the numbers not change if they wanted to. We never know that either. So I don't see what the point is. I just think it's funny that they often mention they didn't. One of the problems with the rune words and the runes in Diablo 2 was that you couldn't find. You had to go to websites and wikis to find out what any of them actually did. You couldn't just look in the game and find out what went into every rune word and what kind of item type it was, what the bonuses were. Those were only available from external sources. And then of course they had this whole thing in Diablo 3 with the proc rates of every skill, which were never listed anywhere in the game and made massive differences and got tweaked in every patch. And you could keep using your energy twister or whatever, and suddenly it didn't work anymore, and no one knew why unless you actually followed the external conversations. And now, of course, in Reaper of Souls, we have legendary materials and legendary crafting material plans, and if you don't know, none of them actually say what drops this in the game. You have to go to websites like I'm saying, DiabloWiki.net. We have this whole legendary materials section, and it lists obviously every legendary material and what drops it, and which ones are bounties, and which one's the best place to farm it, etc. But you would never ever figure this out in the game. You would just be like, oh my god, what is this? What is this orange material? What does this go to? How do I find more of them? And maybe eventually you would figure it out yourself. Like if you were in a single player game back in the 80s or something, you're writing notes down. Oh, the skeleton dropped this. Maybe skeletons do it, But it's funny. They said they wanted all this transparency and such, and then the most important features in the game have zero transparency, and you would never know them without using external sources.
What's thing too about that is I think it was Travis Day who was quoted once as saying, someone was asking about the journal that they had that showed you which bounty only legendaries you could get from which act and whatnot, and he just he was like, well, we took that out because it was kind of clunky and people are just going to go on the internet and find it. This is a complete reversal from exactly what you were just talking about, where they wanted everything in the game, and you'd be able to not need these external sources and go find builds and all that stuff on the internet. It's just hilarious.
Well, luckily, given that I run a website that does this kind of stuff, I guess I can't complain. But it is funny that they keep changing it and switching what they initially said. And people, if you don't use the internet, you will never know what the hell you're doing in this game in many cases. You can't really do the high level min max stuff without looking on websites.
Definitely agree.
So there you go. So next topic: puzzle goblins. Do either of you have a puzzle ring, and do you love it more than ever?
I had one, but I died. So end of conversation for me.
I have yet to find one.
And obviously, the reason they're good. Do you have one, Katniss?
I've not yet found one, unfortunately.
Go get one. They're fun. So, of course, the fun thing is, it makes a little treasure goblin run around behind you, which I always wonder what the other treasure goblins think about that. Like, is he like a traitor? Is he like a house slave or something, and they want to kill him? He's like a quisling. He's betraying the cause, and he's working for the humans now. I don't know. That's a guess, and that's a topic for fan fiction, which I'm not going to write. But so you have this little miniature treasure goblin, and I think it's 12 to 14 items. It varies slightly on each time the ring is found. But he picks up that many white items, and then he drops a rare or occasionally a legendary item. And this was kind of an issue before the patch because you needed the white items to make your crafting recipes. And in the patch, they doubled. I assume they doubled it because they always double everything, right? They improved the odds of a puzzle goblin dropping a legendary item, and they made it so white items are no longer required for crafting recipes. So all you have to do is farm the Matrix Bones quest 1,000 times. You don't have to actually have to find a white chest armor to go with it. And that's made puzzle rings much more usable because you're no longer having to fight your own goblin trying to pick up those gloves you just dropped because you really, really need those to craft something with. And neither of you guys are using it now, so you probably don't care. But I actually am using it currently on both my mains, actually. And it's much nicer to have it now and running around it. But you still don't get enough of visual when he drops a unique. I haven't actually found a unique since the patch, but I mean from the puzzle goblin. But you do notice he makes a little noise effect when he drops a rare now. So at least you can tell it's there instead of just wondering how many he has. But still, there's no counter. I really wish they just had a little buff icon that showed 1 through 12. Because you're never really sure. You kind of lose track, and there's your big moments of combat and chaos, and maybe a white item fell out of some crate over there, but you're not really sure. Your attention is elsewhere. So it's improved, but it's not perfect yet. And are you guys using it? Do you hope to find one to use? Do you care? I really say it was worth it just for the sound effects, because he wanders. He follows behind you and he's chuckling and gurgling and making all those little goblin noises, and it's kind of cute.
From my experience having it, I mean, I liked it, and it was kind of a nice little effect. I think I did get one legendary over the time that I was using it. I found it distracting sometimes though, because it was very easy to forget that he was your follower. And you'd be like, oh, there's a goblin following me, let's kill it. And oh, nope, never mind. We don't need to.
Yeah, I remember in the beta, Holy Knight had one of those on his character, and I was constantly trying to kill it. I mean, like 5 times a game. Like, there, get him! Oh.
So if anything, it's a great troll item.
Well, he is kind of a troll, so that does make sense. So I had a related theory about puzzle goblins, a concept idea. What if puzzle goblins could drop legendary materials? Shouldn't there be one legendary material that only comes from treasure goblins? Wouldn't that make sense? Okay, now do you want the kicker? He only drops them when he gets away and goes through his portal.
No, don't do that.
So you have to activate treasure goblins, and then let them go to ever get this material. Would that drive you absolutely insane?
That would be the best thing for those rifts that you get into and you see all the treasure goblins and you know you're not going to kill them all. That would work there beautifully. Otherwise, I'd be so mad.
So you should get something out of it. Wouldn't that be tough in multiplayer? Like you'd be like, no, don't kill the goblin. I need the piece. Everyone else like, I'm not farming that. I don't care.
Well, I was just saying, if you really didn't want him to get killed, you would have to just go pull the entire screen in the hopes that all the other monsters would distract him enough so they couldn't get the goblin.
It's like, oh, he went north, and he's going south. You're teleporting after nothing, and everyone else is chasing you. What were you going to say, Katniss?
I was just going to agree with the idea behind it, just legendary materials from another source. Because I like the idea of, adventure mode and to some degree campaign mode too, having a purpose of targeting these legendary materials that we all desperately need. But I would like it too if, within Rift somehow, like if, I don't know, if the Rift Guardian or even like this crazy treasure goblin idea too, something other than, those other sources that we know of would just randomly drop you a legendary. It doesn't even have to be the one that you're farming for, but just another way to get them, so that I don't feel like, oh, I'm doing rifts and now I have to transition over to do adventure mode and, oh yeah, I need to make sure while I'm doing this bounty, I stop by this location in case this mob is here to get this legendary material. It would just be nice to be able to multi-farm.
Have either of you guys ever gotten a legendary material from a Rift Guardian besides, souls?
No.
I'm pretty sure that was possible in the beta, because some of them are the same type of monster as will drop the material, Like there's materials you can only get from, whatever, like from the flyers, purple flyers. And you do get a Rift Guardian who's a purple flyer. I'm pretty sure in the beta that I actually saw a few of those from the right kind of monster type. Like there's one that's like the Slytherin type, the SSS guy at the end of the Dogger Oasis, who drops the Shira's piece. and he's one of the Rift Guardians. That's my memory anyway. Obviously, I can't go back and check at this point, but I kept thinking that some of the Rift Guardians were available as the appropriate type of monster to drop this item. But I have never seen one in live, so I think maybe that's not the case anymore.
Yeah, that would be cool.
It should be,
I would be all for that.
Or even if they just dropped a random one. That was one of our things in the beta when Rift Guardians were not very valuable for a while. We were just saying, why don't they just drop one random legendary material once in a while? Who knows what it'll be? You know, it could be anything. But...
I actually had a question for you guys too. Have you noticed that the buff that they did for Gold Find is actually really huge?
If you have gold material, yeah.
No, I've been seeing piles of like 10,000 plus gold now.
Yeah.
You must have some gold find stuff.
Well, it's split between the whole party too, isn't it?
I think that was Diablo 1.
No,
I'm kidding.
the gold.
I noticed. Yeah, I checked that just recently. I was doing master, and my gold find was 202% because one of my followers had a 10% gold find ring on just accidentally, and I noticed that my boots were like 32% or something. And if I put those on, if I took them off and put them on again, it went from 202 to 287, just with one item. It was almost tripling the gold find amount on it, because it multiplies it by the difficulty level, etc. So if you're on Torment 2, getting what is it, 525? I think it is.
Yeah.
I forget. No, it's I don't know. It's 300% on Torment 1. Torment 2 is 400% gold bonus. So if you have a 30%, if you have 100% more, it's going to give you 400% times that. You're going to be getting like 800% gold find on Torment 2. Math. Too many numbers. But yeah, it's a really, as I'm totally stealing your thunder on this, Katniss. But yeah, it's a really big bonus if you have multiple. And obviously, there's Paragon points for that gold find, which no one has ever actually used
Right.
yet, to my knowledge. Or you could even put one on your helm and get 41% with a gem if you really wanted to rack up some gold one day. For those of us who are broke,
Yeah, no,
I'm broke on Europe, so I could
it
actually
helps a
use
ton
that.
with defraying a lot of the cost of gems, essentially, is what I've found. Because, obviously, if you die in hardcore and you have high-level gems, that's one of the tougher things to get back up, obviously, as you're looking for the gear, too.
And if you're crafting a damn ring or
Exactly,
amulet,
yeah,
legendary.
those costs all add up. So it's actually a really huge buff. I think that was kind of just glanced over a lot by people who actually chose to read the patch notes, which is probably you, me, and Xanth, and a couple other people. But the fact,
I'm not sure
and
either.
Xanth didn't even read them.
Yeah.
But the cap is off too. So I mean, like, the fact that you can go above the gold cap, and B, it's multiplicative now. Like, there's just so much you just get a ton of gold. And my one theory now too is that it actually gives other items a ton more utility. Like, I have gladiator gauntlets, and those drop to 3 gold piles after you get a massacre, and those are affected by your gold find too. So it's routinely kill a huge pack of stuff with your AoE, and then pick up 18,000 gold just from your gloves, plus whatever else gold gets dropped, and even things.
I never had those gloves in live. How do they work now? Because I had them in beta, and they just shower
Oh yeah,
gold. It was such fun. It was always like 50 yards behind you. I always had to run back to get
that
it. But so they don't do as many showers now, but they're bigger.
Yeah, I guess you
piles.
could put it that way. They definitely took away like the tons and tons of piles, so maybe it still adds up to about the same. But it's 3 piles every time, and they vary in number. So sometimes you can get like a pile of 100, like 5,000 and 3,000, and that averages all out. But in general, it works off of the gold find that you have and the bonuses that you're under for whatever difficulty you're on too. But they do still drop behind you, which is the one thing I would love for them to change if it just dropped in front of you or at where you're standing. Because they're always moving,
Well, they count it up,
I
so it takes a
guess.
while.
I don't know what the.
Do you guys miss the big gold bars still? The graphic we used to have, you used to have a different graphic for like over 1,000 or over 3,000, and you would get a big gold block, and now it's just a pile of gold
Yeah,
that's
I
slightly
kind of
larger.
like that, the gold bars at least, because it would signify that it was worth picking up or like worth, moving close enough to pick it up. Whereas now you kind of just have to, like, maybe that pile over there is worth it, maybe it's not. I'm not too pressed for gold, so I still run past it.
But especially now too that they took off the labels, so you can't even see how much it is from a glance. I think that's huge. I would love them to bring back the graphic that states, that is a huge pile of gold. You probably want to pick up 20,000 over there.
It's how they changed that. I thought that was a nice. It was fun because that was like a hallmark of I'm actually getting better stuff now. My gold finds I'm on a higher difficulty level. They're dropping big stacks, and now they're all just everything's just a scattered pile. It's weird. That seems like a reverse
Mm.
change they should not have done. Makes me unhappy. I'm going to go away and stuff. Anything you guys want to bring up we didn't get to before we get to the
Um,
final
oh,
theory
are
crafting thing?
there Are we talking about the Witch Doctor at any point? I thought there was some talk about.
No one plays Witch Doctors, Xanth. No one cares.
Womp womp.
No, actually, I've been wanting to play one. I've seen people. It's routinely pulling in the least played characters. We just have a whole thing going in Diablo Nut now with all these new features we're putting in it, and it lists most active characters and stuff. And Witch Doctor was least on hardcore and
Hmm.
softcore when I just looked a minute ago,
That is
which I was
surprising.
surprised by. And they're like super powerful. They're really safe, and there's all these builds now that have like a million minions,
Oh
little
yeah.
zoomancer builds. They're
Um,
basically calling them. And they're just there's this whole bug now with the fetishes. The one skill's replacing the other skill of fetishes, and they're much less powerful. But is that what you're doing with your Witch Doctor, Xanth? Are you doing the
yeah, with
the zoo build, or are you
with
still doing the old
fetish
style?
sycophants, where basically you have a temp.
Could you call it psychopants? I love when you do
uh,
that.
Psychopaths, sure. But it's a 10% on spell hit to summon a little fetish, and it caps at 15. And the way the fetish army is supposed to work is it doesn't affect that cap, but that's what's happening with the bug. But basically, when you get a bunch of the fetishes running around, they're doing a decent chunk of damage. And then you add in the items that are adding to it, like Mask of Jerem. Mine is pretty low. It's like 80% pet damages, or pet damage is increased 80%. And then you add in Tasker and Theo, which after maybe about 15,000, 10,000 shards, with Kadala, I finally was able to get with the new Witch Doctor, which increases pet attack speed by 50%.
And they had IAS plus strength and Resolve.
No, they had int critical hit damage, and I rerolled to critical hit chance as well.
So they're perfect
Just
in every
about.
way, like an Asian
They're
girl.
yes. Um,
Okay, good.
so you add those.
Sorry, we were talking about
Yes.
fetishes, aren't we? Oh, sorry, other kind of
But
fetish.
you add those two together with the fetishes, and when you have about 15, with them taking into account your attack speed and your critical hit, I'm seeing my fetishes just go through T1, T2, critting constantly for maybe 7 million. Um, and there's 15 of them attacking very, very quickly. It's a very, very fun build to play. Um, I'm like, I've played a Witch Doctor for since the beginning of Diablo 3, and this is probably the most fun I've had because I'm not necessarily spamming zombie bears the whole time. I'm actually using pets, but it's semi-permanent and trying to keep them going while also using other skills and Piranado and stuff like that. It's a really really fun class to play, and it's a really really fun build. Um, where some people are getting upset is because they think it becomes overpowered with the combination of those items and stuff like that.
I'm sure they're playing wizards and they're complaining about being overpowered with some
Right.
other
I,
class,
I, I
right?
do think maybe it scales a little bit, but the thing about the whole build is it relies on pet, AI, which is so spotty. Yeah, those fetishes might be doing 7 million damage a hit, but they're also not attacking what they really should be, and they're over, getting lost or getting stuck behind stuff. So
They're over attacking a barrel while the Rift
right.
Guardian sticks on your
So
head, right?
if it was really effective and these things were really intelligent, maybe then it would need to be nerfed. But at the moment, they dawdle far too much. But it's still a really fun build to have.
Do you have any teleport type skills that will all resynchronize and run on top of
No.
you? Because I mean, like a wizard, that was the whole thing in the old days. You would, like you can counter that with a witch dot with a demon hunter if you want to get your wolves or whatever back. If you vault all the way to the one side of the screen, they'll all appear on
Yeah, I
top
mean,
of you
like
again.
you can.
But it can be a pain if they're all scattered. Especially like you'll. The problems I've had is when you're getting sometimes with the red shrines where you're getting the 5 waves
Yeah,
draws to kill 100, and your pet will be way over to one side of the screen like tanking like 7 guys there, and you're like, how come nothing's appearing right now? And you finally notice it's because your pet is keeping anything from dying because it's over
right.
way over on the edge. And with fetishes, you have 15 of those guys, so I can
But
imagine
they're at
that's an
least they're
issue.
doing enough damage that they're not trivial as the way Witch Doctor pets used to kind of be. They used to be just kind of a one-off where you really didn't even think about using pets because they weren't going to last and they weren't going to do any damage. And now you finally have them. My one big complaint about it is it would be nice to know how many I actually have. You get a little visual in the upper left when you have a gargantuan or you have zombie dogs out, but you don't get that for fetishes. So I have no idea in terms of how many are actually there. If I need to keep trying to spam and create more, or if I'm kind of in a nice zone where I don't have to worry about that fluctuation as much.
That seems like an oversight.
I, well, I don't think, originally they were ever intended to be used as often as they are, but, especially in the original, version of the game where it was just the fetish army and that was kind of it.
Yeah.
Now it's much more viable, and it would be, even though they are only supposed to last for a minute, it would still help to kind of, keep track of what you're doing.
Yeah, it's funny they've had the wrong number forever. If you got the Garwolf's chest piece for the Demon Hunter, it would give you 3 wolves, and it would always say 2 on the little wolf box on the top of the screen, and it would always be like half health. It just never updated. If that was in the patch notes, they said they're finally fixing that, but of course the Witch Doctor didn't get the message, so not yet.
Soon.
Someday.
Okay, I have one other brief complaint I wanted to voice that I've noticed on both my Demon Hunters on US and on Europe now. There are 2 legendary bow recipes, crafting recipes, both of which give you a bow that has 3 primary affixes. I'm looking at my notes trying to find where I mentioned it. Oh, they both have one type of damage. I forget, it's cold damage or whatever, and they have IAS, and one of them has damage to elites, one of them has critical hit damage inherently. And as you'll notice with the current system of the game, that's 3 out of your 4 affixes. And neither of them is dex, and neither of them is a socket. So the problem with these bows is that to have a top-level weapon in Reaper of Souls, you have to have plus main stat and plus socket. Would you guys agree with that statement?
Would agree.
And you can't ever get it with either of these bows in the basic roll. What you can always hope to do is either get a socket or dex, and then you have to turn one of your special bonus features, either the IES or the damage to elites or the critical hit damage, into your other essential primary stat. But it's pretty stupid that you have these bows and you're like, oh cool, I can finally get this, and they both have really pain in the ass materials to farm too. And then you make it, and you're never ever going to make one right off the bat that's actually any good. And you have to hope that you get your one random mod is one of the 2 you have to have, and then you have to enchant something else. So they need to fix these. I mean, I'm sure Wyatt is just furiously taking notes on his bed sheets as he listens to this.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I just logged into my Demon Hunter. I made one of these last week because I was playing my Demon Hunter before the Crusader for a little bit.
And you wondered why it sucked.
Well, actually, I think I got lucky because I have one it's 2200 DPS, which is whatever, but it's got 687 dex, 35% crit inherent, and then a socket with another big gem in it for more crit. That seems pretty good.
Maybe they changed it, because that one used to also had another stat on it as well that made it impossible to get dex and socket. I haven't actually checked that one. I made the other one just recently on Europe. I finally found the other recipe and made that, and of course it rolled with vitality with the random stats, so it was totally useless. This just sucks. So it had damage, IAS, vitality, and damage to elites was its 4 primaries, which is garbage. I couldn't even enchant it. It was just a soul. But I was like, I just wanted to check it and make sure it actually did suck, and I found it did, so that was nice. So the last topic here, which is going to take us who knows how long, but someone recently mentioned we had a whole forum strategy post about how to boost DPS for beginners. Some guy had this question about it, and I plugged it in the main page in one of the forum watches, and it got a bunch of replies. And people were all, you got to get CC and CD on all your gear. You got to check, you got to enchant this up. You need more dexterity, etc. All kind of good advice for beginners. But someone in the thread, this guy Mortallo, who creeps me out on Europe because he's collecting rare items that have Flux in the name and keeps showing them to me like Buffalo Bill in his basement. He's going to make a Flux suit. It's only a matter of time. And so anyway, he mentioned that there was this whole thing during Reaper of Souls development. There was data mining that showed they had hard caps on critical hit damage and critical hit chance for a while. And that was we got this whole debate about that. And then I did an interview at some point a few months later with Wyatt or whatever, and he was like, "Yeah, we had that really early testing, and we took it out because we didn't like the artificial caps on stuff." But my thought was, going back to that, imagine if we did have max caps on stats, as you mentioned with your new gloves, Xanth, that you gambled 44,000 shards to get. You got them with CC, and then you had to roll CD or vice versa. And that's pretty much how it goes every time you make any item in the game, right? Gloves or rings or amulets. You must have CC and CD, otherwise it's substandard. And generally you're looking for other stuff as well. But that's because you always want more of those stats, and you're always better. And now IAS has been less important, but not because now you really want Dex as like the 3rd best trifecta stat. But what if there were hard caps on CC and CD at, say, 40 and 400%, or 50 and 500%? I mean, The current max is around 65% and 700%, depending on class, because there's some passives that boost them and stuff. But a well-geared character is what? 55, 500, would you say? Is Torment 3 or 4able? 55,
Sounds
600?
about right.
Yeah.
That's doable. Yeah.
Depends on the class. I mean, Demon Hunters, you can get 55% easily, and it's much harder
Yeah,
with
because there's
others.
set
But,
bonuses and stuff too.
or if you dual wield, obviously you get another 130 crit damage. So that
Right.
makes a big difference. But imagine if it was like 4,400, and you could get pretty easily get 40% to 400%. How would that change your building? Would you look for more IAS? Would you look for more elemental damage? Would you look for more skill damage? Do you think that would promote some more diversity in builds? And would different skills be more valuable? Would different passives be more valuable? Would this be an interesting feature on the whole?
That's interesting. When I was talking to Nevelistus about the Crusader build that went up there on the website, one of the things that we were debating was just how good the Laws of Valor are for Crusaders. And that's the one that gives you the passive regeneration of life, and there are a couple other runes that do really interesting things. But a lot of people use, I'm probably going to screw it up. I think it's a Laws of Hope critical, which just gives you 100% critical hit damage when you activate the law. And I told her, I was like, I think people are still just in this realm of like, critical hit damage and critical hit chance rule supreme, and that's it. And so I think a cap would, if anything, just help break people out of that to notice how good some of these other stats are. Because I would definitely, if there was a cap, I would certainly hit the cap and then start to look at things like cooldown reduction, and things like elemental. And it's tough because those are things that don't show up on your character sheet. They don't show up in your DPS numbers and all that stuff. So people are probably going to look and be like, it doesn't really do anything for me. But they could actually be game changing, like build changing fixes when you stack them. So I think that would definitely just help change the mindset, change the culture of Diablo.
It'd be nice for you, Xanth, because you've got this whole thing with you're looking for stats that boost
Right.
damage in your pets. And you'd be doing that anyway, but obviously the crit amplifies that. But that seems like that's the kind of stat that would be. Imagine if those stats were in direct conflict with critical hit. You could have pet damage or critical hit. Right now, you'd be like,
Yeah,
ugh.
that would be awful. And I agree with Katniss. It would be kind of nice to break the cycle of just the trifecta. And I mean, the trifecta has been something we've talked and complained about for a long time, how it does, kind of homogenize gear in terms of what you need and what you want, and to kind of break from that mold. A cap coming in might not be the worst thing. And like Katniss had said, something as simple as elemental damage, or I got a sword for my witch doctor. I think it's Doombringer. The name escapes me, but it's 20% increased physical damage, and that's awesome because that really again goes well with the pets because they're physical. So stuff like that, while it won't show up on sheet DPS, is still a nice thing to think about. But we're very focused and ingrained to look at just the big number, and that's the thing that matters, and that's the the e-peen for everybody is how big is my DPS. And it would be nice to kind of deviate a little bit from that because when I think back to like Diablo 2, I was never really that concerned about damage per se, or like how big the number could go. I was concerned about getting certain items to make certain builds work and stuff like that. And you're kind of there in Diablo 3 with trying to get certain items to get certain things to work, but you are still very much tied to the how much damage am I going to do and what does that big number look like.
You look at like the current system of the game. The only hard cap is on movement speed, basically. I mean, for a while we had it on Magic Find and Gold Find, but those don't really exist anymore. At least Magic Find certainly doesn't exist anymore. But I mean, imagine if there was no cap on movement speed. Currently, with Paragon points, even you don't need any movement speed on gear. You can just you can roll your Ice Climbers to something else, and then roll the movement speed on them to something else, and have like the super 6-stat boots and stuff. But even if you don't have Paragon points, you can get it from other stuff. I mean, there's all these items. There's slave bonds or one of the bracers, and there's a variety of other. There's got to be 8 or 10 other items that give you movement speed. And basically, all you do when you get those is you re-roll that to try to get something better. Try to get main stat or whatever. Because you're already at the movement speed cap anyway, and there's so many ways to enhance that with skills. But you kind of wonder how that would be. Diablo 2 had max caps on resistances were all at 75%, and there were a few items that boosted resistances to 85%, like paladins and stuff had those. And those weren't really that needed unless you were doing really in-game, if you were doing like Uber Tristram on whatever the highest was. It Players 8 was what the
Hmm.
Diablo 2 system was. And you'd want those. Imagine, so if you have caps on stuff, then you could have things that let you exceed the caps. And there's some rare legendary gloves that lets you do 5% more critical hit chance or something like that. And then that's like the most awesome glove to find because now you can get 5% over the cap. Whereas currently, it's just another 5%. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not, whatever. And I think it gives you a little less variety. I can't see them putting this in the game now, but I mean, they did talk about it early in Reaper of Souls, and I'm kind of surprised they didn't worry more about it. This was something people were wondering a lot about early in the Diablo 2 gear days, where why can't we have a hard cap on resistance at 1,000 or 800 or whatever? Instead of, it's always better to have more resistance. And that's kind of not so much the case now because you get diminishing returns, and that kind of serves as a hard cap for you, but you don't really have diminishing returns on crit chance and damage. It's always more damage, and it's always
Right.
Yeah.
better to have more damage.
Something.
And obviously, they could have also, you could have, say there's 20% max on plus skill damage to any individual skill, or 40% max to elemental damage. So you'd want a really well-rounded character with all these different bonuses instead of just more of X and more of Y. That's all you care
Yeah.
about now. I mean, obviously, fire damage is the best thing for most classes. You get the chest armor, and you get the gloves, and you get the bracers, and there's all these different individual items. You get 100% elemental damage to fire, and then most builds, there's one that has like 4 different fire skills, and you're just set. That's by far the highest damage possible, even though it's not showing up on the sheet.
Yeah,
You were
no,
saying, Katniss?
well, first I was going to say something, but then you brought up another great point too. So the first thing I'll address is I think what you're talking about right now, if you had caps on a little bit of everything, it would only serve to enrich the enchanting system too, because that then makes it so, all right, I find this ring and it's awesome and it has 6% crit and, 50%, like let's just say it rolls perfectly for those trifectas, but you have all those things maxed out on other pieces. Based off of other pieces. So at that point, you can actually go ahead and use the enchanting system to say, I'm actually going to target, elemental on this ring, or something completely that you wouldn't normally want to go for, just because you've hit your cap. So I think that
Area
exactly, yeah, it would
damage,
just
something
help to
like
make
that.
the choices that we have more robust, and make that system that they added in for ROS even more profitable. And then if you look back to kind of give more credence to the point you were making about skills gaining some extra utility or extra special attention based on going over the caps, if you look back at the most successful build in classic Diablo 3, it was the whirlwind, wow, what is it? Run like the wind build, and that was because it lets you go over the movement speed cap, and it was the fastest, farming build out there. So if you get something where it allows you to all of a sudden you're way exceeding the all resistance cap, or you're way exceeding the critical hit chance cap or something, those skills become far more profitable, and maybe you get into territory where they start to feel mandatory. But it's just it puts a new spin on creating builds and gearing choices, which I think is just awesome. Something that would help us take this game into the long term.
That's one reason I often wish we had modding in Diablo 3, because people would do this kind of thing in mods. You could actually build the whole system of the game. Okay, what if you build a game where IAS is the most important stat? That kind of thing. And you could really see how these worked out. And the developers would be like, "Oh, this is cool. It's almost like theory crafting the
Hmm.
full game at once." But without modding, they can't. They can only make incremental changes to the main game, and we can't. We can only sort of
Right.
imagine what it would be like. So, okay. Any final thoughts, guys? Would you actually want that, or do you think it's just an interesting thought experiment? I mean, if they said tomorrow, "Hey, we're gonna go to 45, 450 are the max caps on CC and CD. Good luck with your changing your year around."
I think it would be something kind of cool, like if they brought it to the PTR with like the intention of just testing it. Like where this is a legitimate test realm. There's no guarantee that this would ever even, work, but we just want to see what happens when you guys use it. Um, I think I would like to see it in play before committing to saying, yeah, let's go for it. Right.
Like in a mod. Oh wait,
Well, here's a crazy idea. Because people have been stating with the seasons and ladders, like this could be Blizzard's opportunity to really like flip that game mode on its head and go about it in a completely different way than they did it in Diablo 2. So what if you had a season, for instance, it's last however long the duration is supposed to last, but they actually instituted the caps for that season. So, you were looking for your gear and you could only hit 40% crit, you could only hit 400 crit hit damage, and that was their little, test realm, if you will. And who says they never have to actually like maneuver all that all those changes into the main game, into where your main characters are. But it's just a seasonal thing.
And that wouldn't be that bad since everybody's already starting at 1. It's not like they could complain about what had happened to their gear on their current character because they'd have to start all over.
Hmm.
Yeah, and you would know it going in. Obviously, the whole point is they don't want to make changes that mess up current gear, that invalidate current builds or whatever. They always say that, and they do it anyway, but only to demon hunters. But generally speaking, they don't want to devalue current gear or make wreck your builds, except in patches. But that's very, very different. Unless you're barbarian, which is very, very different.
Yeah.
But exceptions. But yes, obviously, if it was in a new ladder season and people knew about it going in, and they made it very obvious in some way, like your obviously your DPS sheet would have to have a golden number at 40 when you got to it or something like that. And you'd be like, oh,
Right.
this means something shiny. Maybe they have a tooltip pop up every 5 seconds, like when you have a brand new character. Like every single thing you do, you turned over a rock. Check here to make it go away. And you can't make it go away unless you actually click the little X button.
Oh man.
I turned over a rock all by myself. I get a bonus for that. Yes, achievements. Bing, ding, ding, ding. Okay, we've gone long. We've gone long enough.
I guess
any final thoughts,
maybe
guys?
it might deviate too much, but we've talked a lot about seasons. Are you guys going to commit to jumping in as soon as they get started?
Yes.
No.
I like the idea of seasons. Again, like similar to you, Xanth, how you were saying, re-rolling and leveling a character in ROS is pretty enjoyable. Obviously, there's always the thought experiment of doing the power level, but just the fact that it's so much fun now with adventure mode and the different kinds of bounties and things you'll run into as you are getting these characters leveled up, I think it's just it's a fun experience. I would love to, have a reason to do it, have those incentives within seasons to participate, and I see it as a good way to change up things. Like I might want to, because I love my Crusader right now. Like I really want to keep playing on it, but I would love to use the seasons as, all right, I really miss my Demon Hunter. I want to jump in and build one from the ground up.
Nice.
Yeah, I've been doing that for the last month on Europe, as I've been playing on Europe as well as America. And I've just gotten to like Paragon 120 something on Europe now. So essentially, I've been doing it, that way while everyone else was still with their old characters. It's kind of fun to have like no gold. I mean, I had 1 billion gold when Reaper of Souls started in US, and I had like 700 gold in Europe. So obviously, it's a little bit different, not being able to upgrade gyms and stuff, and having to do all your gear from the start, having no Paragon points, etc. So I guess I've been doing a ladder season, a one-person ladder season
You're
myself
number
for the last
one.
month and a half. So, which, yeah, I'm leading my ladder too. And I had just gotten the Demon Hunter up to doing. I could zoom Torment pretty well, Torment 1 in hardcore. And then of course something bad happened and she died. So, and it was actually kind of vexing because I had just found a Ring of Royal Grandeur for the first time. Crappy roll though, so I wasn't using it. So I didn't have. I'm always broke on Europe, so I can't. I didn't have the gold to reroll the ring a bunch. I have I have 180 of every marquee gem, but I can't afford to upgrade any more of the damn things. And so I was sitting on that, and that enabled me, of course, to change my build because I was running with 3 pieces of all guilds and 3 pieces of Kane set, and now it's like, hey, I only need 2 of these, and I can add in Ashira's or something like that. So I went and crafted the 2 Ashira set and a different all guild set, and those were all sitting in my stash, waiting until I had enough souls to roll them to something usable to actually be upgrades. And plus, the ring was sitting in the stash too, and then I died. So I'm like, with all my best gear and all my gems and stuff. So now I made a new one who just got back to 70 a few days ago. And of course, I have all these items in my stash, but I need like 20 souls to roll them all 3 or 4 times a piece to get them to be really good. And the ring, and the puzzle ring I had, which I'd outgrown, and everything else. So, and it took me like 7. I had one pretty good. I had a 2680 bow sitting there without a socket in it. And of course, it took me like 8 rolls to get a socket in the damn thing, which ate up all my extra souls that I had. So she's been slowly trying to get back into this gear. She's wearing all this gear, but it's like, it's like plus grenades damage on the belt and stuff, just these random stats that I don't want, but I don't have the souls to fix them yet. So it's kind of weird it was like I started a new ladder season with half my gear, but it was all mismatched and bizarre. Like when you go into grandma's
And put
closet.
on her clothes?
But, well, that
Okay,
only
just
when no one's
just
watching,
checking.
of course. Just a bit of fun. Not the makeup, though.
So
That
you
looks
tried the
funny.
makeup.
Until you get used to it, until it's different. But anyway, so you've listened to the Diablo 3 podcast. We are online at Diablo8Gamers.com. And we have a lot of really cool new features coming up on the Diablo Nut thing. I've had a news post written about that for a week, and it's not live. It keeps adding in new features, and we keep having to add to the post. But lots of cool stuff with looking at all the most popular skills and builds, and you can look at every single item, every single player in our database. You can look at all their gear and look at, say, I want to look at rings of royal grandeur, and you look and there's 2,000 of them. You can just look at the hover stats for 2,000 different rings of royal grandeur, that kind of thing. It's very fun to be nosy that way, but that should be coming up this week. Hopefully, we'll finally be launching. And Katniss is going to be making the world's famous Crusader until he dies again. And Xanth is going to be the
Somebody
Spanish
has
Inquisition to his witch doctors. Yeah,
Never.
no one expects the Spanish Inquisition, right? And you've listened to the show, and
Moo,
blah
moo,
blah
moo.
blah. Moo.
Ooh.
Moo. Have
No,
either of you
that's the
gotten
one I'm
Moo Rift?
missing.
I have not gotten Moo
They
Rift.
in the patch notes they said that they had increased the chance to get the cow rift, but I still have yet to see it.
They doubled the chance of zero, so what's zero doubled?
Not
One of
me.
you guys is a mathematician,
me.
right? Yeah, zero doubled is 2.5, I think.
That's
That's how Jay Wilson did it.